Did you know that Martin Shkreli, the infamous Pharma Bro, raised the price of a life-saving drug from $13.50 to $750 overnight? That's a jaw-dropping 5,000% increase. Stick around as we dive deep into his wild life and the chaos that followed. What's the story behind this controversial figure? Let's unravel the tangled web of Martin Shkreli's life, from his early days to the legal battles that would change him forever. So let's rewind a bit. Martin Shkreli was born in 1983 in Brooklyn, New York, to a hard-working Albanian immigrant parents who had come to America in search of a better life. Growing up in a modest household, Martin was no stranger to the challenges of financial instability. His parents, who both held jobs as janitors, instilled in him a relentless work ethic and a deep drive to succeed against the odds. From a young age, Martin showed an extraordinary intellect and an unusual knack for numbers, unlike kids his age, who were more interested in sports and video games. Martin was obsessed with the stock market. By the time he was in middle school, he was already poring over financial reports and studying the intricacies of trading. His fascination with finance grew, and it wasn't long before he was trading stocks while still in high school, impressing his teachers and peers alike with his financial acumen. Despite his talents, Shkreli's upbringing wasn't without its challenges. He often felt like an outsider, driven by an intense need to prove himself in a world that didn't always make room for ambitious kids from immigrant families. This drive pushed him to attend Baruch College, a school known for producing business leaders, where he studied business and economics. However, his ambition couldn't be contained within the confines of a classroom. He dropped out to chase bigger dreams, starting his career on Wall Street and quickly making a name for himself as a young, aggressive investor. By his mid-20s, Shkreli had already co-founded a hedge fund that specialized in biotech stocks, a move that would eventually set the stage for his later, more infamous actions. But it wasn't until 2015 that Shkreli truly stepped into the spotlight. That year, he co-founded Turing Pharmaceuticals, a company with its clear strategy, acquiring the rights to niche life-saving drugs that had little competition, then maximize the profits by increasing their prices. Turing Pharmaceuticals quickly gained attention in the pharmaceutical world, but not for reasons Shkreli might have hoped. The company's business model was seen by many as exploitive, as it focused on acquiring older drugs that were essential for treating serious conditions, but had long been overlooked by larger pharmaceutical companies. Shkreli believed that by hiking the prices of these drugs, he could funnel the profits back into research and development for new treatments, a justification that many found hard to swallow. And it was this strategy that led to the incident that would define his career and public image. Now let's get to the meat of the story, the infamous Turing Pharmaceuticals incident. In 2015, Shkreli's company acquired the rights to a drug called Daraprim, used to treat parasitic infection called toxoplasmosis, which can be life-threatening, especially for individuals with weakened immune systems. And guess what? He hiked the price from $13.50 to a staggering $750 per pill, an increase of over 5,000%. This outrageous price jump sparked a firestorm of criticism across the internet and the media.
A lot of times people want an enemy. They're going to get an enemy one way or the other, and you can say whatever you want, but it's people who want the enemy, you know.
And if I'm the enemy for you, good, I'm happy, man. I'm fulfilling some need in your life.
People were quick to label him as the embodiment of corporate greed, and Shkreli didn't shy away from the attention. Instead, he embraced his role as the villain, often taunting his critics on social media with smug remarks and unapologetic defenses of his actions. He quickly became a meme, a caricature of everything wrong with the pharmaceutical industry. But the story doesn't end there. Shkreli wasn't just content with the notoriety, he actively courted it. He appeared on various talk shows where he frequently defended his actions, arguing that the price hike was necessary to fund research and development for new drugs. He claimed that without such profits, innovation in the pharmaceutical industry would stagnate. However, this argument did little to quell public outrage.
Do you think you've done anything wrong?
On the advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and respectfully decline to answer your question.
His unapologetic demeanor and frequent smirking during congressional hearings only served to fuel the fire, making him a target for even more anger and criticism. But wait, there's more. Amidst the chaos surrounding the Daraprim price hike, Shkreli's past came back to haunt him. In December of 2015, He was arrested on charges unrelated to the drug price scandal. He was accused of securities fraud and conspiracy, charges that stemmed from his time running hedge funds prior to his touring pharmaceutical days. Prosecutors alleged that Shkreli had orchestrated a Ponzi-like scheme, using funds from his pharmaceutical companies to pay off disgruntled investors from his failed hedge funds. As the legal proceedings unfolded, public fascination with Shkreli only grew. His life became a whirlwind of court appearances and intense media scrutiny. Yet even as he faced these serious charges, Shkreli continued to live a life of excess and provocation. He was often spotted at high-end events, including a notorious Wu-Tang Clan album listening party, where he purchased the only copy of their album Once Upon a Time in Cologne for $2 million. This purchase, along with other outrageous antics, kept him in the spotlight and solidified his image as a provocator who reveled in his own infamy. Meanwhile, his social media presence became a spectacle in itself, with people tuning in to see what outrageous thing he would say or do next. It was like watching a train wreck. You couldn't just look away. His online antics, combined with his legal battles, painted a picture of a man who was either completely out of touch with reality or deeply committed to playing the role of the villain no matter what the cost. As you can imagine, Shkreli faced massive backlash from all directions. Activists, healthcare professionals, and even lawmakers were all hounding him. The media painted him as the face of pharmaceutical greed, and it wasn't just rhetoric. There are real numbers to back it up. A survey conducted shortly after the price hike revealed that 78% of Americans believe drug prices were unreasonably high, with many pointing to Shkreli as the prime example of what was wrong with the industry. Protest erupted across the country. Yes, protest, where people demanded justice for those affected by his price hikes. In New York City, hundreds gathered outside touring pharmaceutical headquarters, holding signs that read, "Pharma Greed Kills," and chanting for affordable health care.
Overcome the structures and the organizations that they have in place to address where the market needs to go is certainly something that's going to be a challenge moving forward.
It wasn't just about one drug. It was about the principle of fair access to essential medications. People were outraged that a single executive could make life-saving treatments unaffordable for so many. The outrage extended beyond the general public. Multiple members of Congress, including prominent senators like Bernie Sanders and Elijah Cummings, publicly condemned Shkreli's actions and called for stricter regulations on drug pricing. A congressional hearing on drug pricing was convened, during which Shkreli was infamously subpoenaed. His smug and dismissive attitude during the hearing only intensified public anger. Meanwhile, the media didn't let up either. Shkreli was featured on the covers of major publications like Time and the New York Times, often accompanied by headlines that underscored his role as the most hated man in America. Shkreli's action forced a conversation about drug pricing and ethics that the industry could no longer ignore. The average cost of a new drug in the U.S. had risen to over $1,000 per month by 2015, a 98% increase over the previous decade, and Shkreli became the poster child for this alarming trend. His story highlighted the darker side of capitalism in healthcare, and many began to question how far companies would go in the name of profit. It wasn't just the Daraprim. A study found that over 400 drugs had seen price increases of more than 100% between 2013 and 2015, and Shkreli's case showed a harsh spotlight on this disturbing practice. The legal authorities were not on his side either, and the mounting pressure was palpable. The FBI and federal prosecutors took notice, and while Shkreli's arrest in December 2015 was officially for securities fraud, there was no doubt that his newfound notoriety accelerated the investigation. He faced up to 20 years in prison if convicted on all counts, and the charges included multiple counts of securities fraud, conspiracies to commit securities fraud, and wire fraud. The mounting legal challenges were not just a personal blow to Shkreli, but also sent shockwaves through the pharmaceutical industry. His case became a warning to other companies that such exploitive practices would no longer be tolerated without serious consequences. Fast forward to August 2017. and Shkreli's long-awaited reckoning had arrived. He was convicted on 2 counts of securities fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit securities fraud. The charges stemmed from his activities before founding Turing Pharmaceuticals, specifically his time managing hedge funds, where he misled investors and manipulated stock prices. The court found that he used money from his pharmaceutical companies to pay back investors in his failed hedge funds, essentially running a Ponzi scheme. The verdict was a major win for prosecutors, and Shkreli was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. In addition to prison time, he was ordered to forfeit $7.4 million in assets, including the famous $2 million Wu-Tang Clan album, as well as a Picasso painting and other luxury items he had acquired during his rise to infamy. The sentence was notably lighter than the 20 years he could have faced, but it was still a significant downfall for someone who had once been a rising star in both the financial and pharmaceutical worlds. While Shkreli was incarcerated, the pharmaceutical world continued to grapple with the fallout of his actions. Turing Pharmaceuticals, the company he had founded, faced a collapse. Sales of Daraprim plummeted as hospitals and healthcare providers sought alternative treatments and compounded their own versions of the drug to avoid the inflated prices. The company became a pariah in the industry, and by 2018, Turing had rebranded itself as Vira Pharmaceuticals in an attempt to distance itself from the Shkreli scandal. The industry as a whole felt the tremors of public distrust. A poll conducted in 2017 revealed that 83% of Americans believed that drug prices were unreasonably high, and Shkreli's actions were frequently cited as a key example why. The pharmaceutical industry's reputation took a hit, with trust in drug companies dropping to an all-time low of just 38% that year, according to the Harris poll. But here's the kicker. Shkreli's case didn't just damage his own reputation. It sparked a wave of legislative proposals aimed at regulating drug prices. Lawmakers began introducing bills to curb price gouging and increase transparency in drug pricing. In 2019, the House of Representatives passed the Lower Drug Cost Now Act, which aimed to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices directly with pharmaceutical companies. While the bill faced challenges in the Senate, the fact that it gained significant traction highlighted how Shkreli's antics had opened Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas that the pharmaceutical industry could no longer ignore. The conversation about drug affordability became more prevalent, with more than 70% of Americans supporting government action to lower drug prices by 2018. As for Shkreli himself, well, he became somewhat of a folk hero for internet trolls and contrarians who admired his audacity, if not his ethics. Some people defended him, arguing that he was just playing the game of capitalism to its logical extreme, exploiting the same loopholes that countless others had used before him. Others couldn't stand the sight of him, viewing him as the epitome of greed and arrogance. His legacy is a complicated one. While his name is forever associated with one of the most notorious episodes of pharmaceutical greed, it also inadvertently led to stronger push for reform in an industry that desperately needed it. So what can we take away from the wild life of Martin Shkreli? His actions didn't just affect him. They sent shockwaves throughout the healthcare landscape. The ripple effect was profound, sparking a national conversation about drug pricing, corporate ethics, and the precarious balance between profit and public health. In the aftermath of Shkreli's actions, public trust in the pharmaceutical industry hit a historic low. A 2017 Gallup poll showed that only 27% of Americans had a positive view of the industry, a stark decline from previous years. The outrage over the Daraprim price hike was not an isolated incident. It was emblematic of deeper systemic issues that many had long suspected, but now had a tangible example to point to. Shkreli's story is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that while the pharmaceutical industry has the power to deliver life-saving innovations and breakthroughs, it can also be overshadowed by greed and ethical failings. The average cost of prescription drugs in the United States had risen by 57% from 2006 to 2015, with many of these increases justified by companies as necessary for research and development. However, Shkreli's unapologetic manipulation of drug pricing exposed how some in the industry were exploiting these justifications for pure profit. His actions forced policymakers, healthcare professionals, and the public to confront uncomfortable questions. How much is too much when it comes to pricing life-saving medications? Where is the line between fair profit and exploitation? And most importantly, who's responsible for ensuring that essential medications remain accessible to those who need them the most. These are not just rhetorical debates. They are questions with real-world implications for millions of people who rely on affordable medication to survive. In the wake of the Shkreli scandal, several states passed laws aiming at curbing excessive drug prices, and more than a dozen others introduced similar legislation. The federal government also ramped up its scrutiny of pharmaceutical companies, with multiple investigations into pricing practices launched in the years following Shkreli's conviction. While these efforts have led to some progress, the debate over drug pricing continues, with Shkreli's story serving as a stark reminder of the potential for abuse in a system that places profit above all else. In the end, Martin Shkreli's legacy is a complicated one. While he will forever be remembered as Pharma Bro, the man who hiked the price of a life-saving drug by over 5,000%, his actions also catalyzed a much-needed reckoning within the pharmaceutical industry. His story underscores the importance of vigilance, regulation, and ethical considerations in an industry where the stakes are literally life and death. If you found this video interesting, please subscribe for content uploads. We love engagement in the comment section, so drop your thoughts and video ideas you'd like to see next. Stay tuned for more deep dives into the lives of the world's most influential figures and businesses. Until next time, keep dreaming big and believing in the power of innovation.